In our headlines, BCCI suggests central bank reconsider cash loan proposals. And later on, opportunities to enter Australian market through CPTPP. Hello there and welcome to another edition of BizLine here on VTV International. I'm Huang Hang, and as usual, we'll begin with some economic highlights over the past week. The Vietnam Chamber of Commerce and Industry VCCI this week suggested the State Bank of Vietnam or SBV reconsider a proposal on limiting unsecured personal loans in cash by consumer finance companies. The move was made after the SBV recently released a draft circular to amend Circular number 43 to stipulate consumer lending by financial companies. The proposed changes under the draft circular include limiting unsecured personal loans in cash to existing customers with good credit and no overdue debt, and limiting the maximum amount of such cash loans to 30% of total loans. Therefore, to ensure consumer lending for sustainable, healthy and efficient development, the SBV said cash loans should be limited to finance companies' existing customers with good credit history and no overdue debt. The Ministry of Industry and Trade has launched an anti-dumping investigation into industrial medium density fireboard or MDF imported from Thailand and Malaysia. The Department of Trade Protection under the Ministry of Industry and Trade said the investigation was initiated based on requests submitted by 4 domestic MDF producers on October the 18th, 2018. Industrial wood board products imported from Thailand and Malaysia were dumped into the Vietnamese market at a margin of 18.6% to 50.6%. These firms allege that dumping is the main cause of damage to Vietnam's MDP production sector. The ministry recommended all organizations and individuals that are importing, exporting, distributing and using the investigated goods to provide information to protect their rights and interests. The National Industry Encouragement Program for 2019 to 2018 contributed largely to industrial development in rural areas and resulted in shifting the economic structure towards industrialization, modernization, and new-style rural area building. That's what Minister of Industry and Trade Chen Tuan Anh said at a conference in Hanoi on April the 24th. The program organized vocational training and skill improvement courses for 18,000 rural laborers to help them secure stable jobs. It also helped 630 industrial establishments in rural areas apply advanced technology to their production to improve product quality. In addition, 15 regional exhibitions on outstanding rural industrial goods were organized, honoring regional and national products that pose huge potential for market development. The Vĩnh Tân International Seaport, worth more than 2.3 trillion Vietnam dong or $98.7 million, opened its door last week in the southern province of Bình Thuận. Financed by the Vĩnh Tân International Port Company, a member of the Pacific Corporation, the port spans 140 hectares in Tuy Phong district. The investors said the port will contribute to promoting investment attraction, satisfying the increasing demand for cargo transport of local enterprises in Bình Thuận and neighboring provinces, while supporting the local budget and creating more local jobs. A stream processing complex in Đầm Hà district, Quảng Ninh province, the largest high-tech stream production facility in the northern region, was inaugurated on Tuesday. Once operational, the complex will contribute to ensuring the output of high-quality stream for farmers in Quảng Ninh in particular and northern provinces in general. This, together with other complexes in Bình Định and Bạc Liêu provinces, forms a production chain to replicate the most advanced and efficient models of stream production, boosting the domestic stream industry in a sustainable manner. From April the 4th, Seagull Aviation or Hai-O Aviation officially commences the new tourist service over Phong Nha Kẻ Bàng National Park. The plane used for the aerial tour is the latest American Cessna Grand Caravan 208BEX, offering 2 seats for pilots and 12 for travelers, with wide windows to witness panoramic views of Phong Nha Kẻ Bàng. The flights will take off from Đồng Hới Airport and the VIP station of Da Nang International Airport. Those were some highlights in our economic scene. Up next, we will discuss how Vietnamese businesses can take advantage of the CPTPP to gain better access to the Australian market in our crosstalk. As one of the 20 largest economies in the world, Australia has become one of Vietnam's very potential export and investment markets. In particular, Vietnam and Australia are members of the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, otherwise known as the CPTPP. This is a favorable condition to promote trade and investment. However, right now, Vietnam's total export turnover to Australia accounts for only 1.84% of the country's total exports, a relatively small rate compared to a rather large market like Australia. This week's Bizline tries to find out why Vietnam's exports to Australia are still limited and how Vietnamese businesses can take advantage of the CPTPP to gain better access to the Australian market. But first, let's take a look at the following clip to have an overview of the current trade relation between Vietnam and Australia.
According to the WTO Center under the VCCI, after 10 years, Vietnam's export of goods to Australia has held steady around $4.8 billion. Australia ranked 13th among importers of Vietnamese goods, while the United States ranked number 1, followed by China. Vietnam is the 14th largest importer of Australian goods, worth a total of $3.2 billion. In terms of service export, after 10 years, Vietnamese export services to Australia doubled from $500 million in 2007 to $1 billion in 2017. However, the value is still limited. Vietnam ranked 4th among ASEAN countries in exporting services to Australia after Singapore, Indonesia, and Thailand. In particular, tourism services accounted for the biggest part of the service imports. In terms of investment from Vietnam to Australia increased fivefold in 10 years, from nearly $140 million in 2008 to nearly $700 million in 2018. However, this number is still very small.
We have invited to our studio today Mr. Raymond Mallon, economist and advisor of the Australia-Vietnam Economic Reform Program. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for inviting.
Now, first of all, we have mentioned a few figures relating to exports and investment from Vietnam to Australia. So what are your thoughts on the statistic mentioned in the clip?
Although Australia is the 20th largest economy in the world, or in the top 20, it's a very small population compared with the other countries mentioned. You know, China has 1,400 million people. US has 325 million. I think Vietnam's 96. Australia's only 25 million people. So actually, on a per capita basis, you're exporting more to Australia than you are to the US or to China. So there will always be a limit because of the small scale in terms of exports, and particularly for consumer products.
Now, I know that you mentioned a little bit about why the goods export to Australia is still limited, but can you elaborate on this?
The first thing is what I mentioned about the size of the market. You know, that will always limit it. Secondly, some of the areas that Vietnam has a comparative advantage in trading in are areas that Australia is relatively strong in too. Both Australia and Vietnam have reputations for exporting agriculture commodity, food products in particular, processed food, and quite high quality in most cases. So there's some area, to some extent, in that agricultural area, which particularly in the past was a major part of Vietnam's exports, Australia's got a comparative advantage. You know, there are some niche markets where Vietnam is competing in Australia in some of the tropical fruits. Australia grows tropical fruits also, but at different times of the year, so the seasonality works well. I think there's great potential to continue that, and then you can see other food products such as processed, you know, instant noodles, condiments. You're seeing Vietnamese fish sauce, soy sauce, all that appearing in Australia, but probably limited. I think as you move up the value chain into you know, higher value manufacturing, I think there's going to be increased opportunity. At the moment, by far the dominant trading partner with Australia is China. They're supplying most of our manufactured goods at the moment. This provides a great opportunity as Vietnam gets its economies of scale to take over some of that market share from Vietnam. The other problem that Vietnam will face in agriculture, for instance, is Australia has some of the tightest SBS and health standards in the world. Some countries would argue that they are technical, you know, they're a form of protection, but they are. They're tough. They're hard to get around, and to get around them, you've got to have a certain scale to make it worthwhile to comply with those Australian standards. That's an important factor, and I think what will be important in the future is in Vietnam, as the logistics, as the trade support services develop, and providing support for agriculture and for other businesses, that will help overcome some of those barriers. Those specialised agencies will know what's required to meet Australian standards, and farmers, for instance, in agriculture will need to be organised together to ensure there's enough scale, consistency of quality, not just quality that's there, but getting the consistency of quality and standards to meet the needs of the Australian market.
Currently, three main areas of Vietnamese goods exported to Australia are agriculture, manufacturing and services. Some tropical fruits including mangoes and lychees, dragon fruit are very welcome in this market. Electronics, some metal products, garments and the tourism service sector are also key Vietnamese exports to Australia.
So biosecurity is a very important thing for Australia. We rely very much upon a clean and green agricultural sector. So we do a lot to protect our sector from diseases and other threats that don't exist. We are already importing from Vietnam a range of other tropical fruits, and close cooperation between our two governments, between our two agriculture departments, has occurred over that time, including a visit by Australian scientists to Vietnam to assess the biosecurity aspects of dragon fruit production in Vietnam, that we've seen Vietnamese lychees exported to Australia. So Australians are looking forward to consuming the delicious tropical fruits of Vietnam, and the role of government is to make sure that that happens in a way that's very safe.
Before CPTPP, traded commodities between Vietnam and Australia have enjoyed preferential tariffs in the ANZFTA, the free trade agreement between Australia, New Zealand and ASEAN, which took effect on the 1st of January 2010. Compared to ANZFTA, in CPTPP, Australia offers broader and deeper commitments for Vietnam's exported services and investment. The level of tariff commitments between these two agreements is equivalent because by 2021, both of these agreements will lower the tariffs on Vietnamese goods to Australia down to 0%. However, the rules of origin in each agreement are different. Enterprises under CPTPP will have more options to apply whichever agreement is suitable for them.
Về dịch vụ và đầu tư thì Australia có rất là nhiều những cái cam kết mở cửa hơn cho Việt Nam, đặc biệt là trong một số những cái lĩnh vực dịch vụ và đầu tư mà Việt Nam có thế mạnh như là phân phối này, viễn thông này, vận tải hàng không, du lịch. Thì đây là những cái cơ hội mới cho các cái doanh nghiệp, các nhà cung cấp xuất khẩu dịch vụ của Việt Nam cũng như là các cái nhà đầu tư của Việt Nam khi tiếp cận thị trường Australia. Và so với ANZFTA thì là những cái cam kết mở cửa hơn này thì là cao hơn so với ANZFTA.
We are making comparison between CPTPP and AANZ. Is the commitment between Vietnam and Australia in terms of CPTPP is higher than compared to existing commitments of AANZ between Australia, New Zealand and ASEAN?
Yes, it's a bit broader, not so much broader, but it does cover a wider range of areas and has much more focus on boosting economic cooperation. I think by having, again, the bigger group of countries in there will make it more attractive as well. ANZFTA was relatively small. Basically, it was ASEAN plus Australia and New Zealand, so there's not a big incentive for producers to get on top of the rules and the procedures for ANZFTA. It's a really relatively small market. Now you've got a CPTP, it's much bigger focus. So I think that's what's much more attractive about that grouping. Moving towards harmonisation of such a big market is very, very important. I think also the EU Vietnam Free Trade Agreement is going to be very important for similar reasons. So it's a much bigger scale, therefore I think there's going to be many more opportunities. I think one of the other things it does, both those agreements, is it provides an opportunity to diversify your sources of investment. Most of the investment at the moment, foreign investment coming into Vietnam, has been from Asia, and it's been fantastic for Vietnam in terms of introducing technology. But in terms of minimising risk, it's probably good to have a greater diversification, more foreign investment coming from some of the other OECD countries from Australia, but also from Europe, from Canada, etc.
Now, with commitments in CPTPP and other existing free trade agreement between Vietnam and Australia, what opportunities will it bring to enterprises and investors from both sides?
One of the problems in the past is that Vietnam's struggle with the complexity of rules, and one of the new agreements is aiming to reduce the complexity, trying to make sure that all countries move towards harmonised rules as one thing, like the rules of origin, the certificates of origin, these sorts of things, but also harmonisation of other things such as competition policy, labour standards, the role of SOEs. So if all the countries who are trading among each other have similar rules, it will make it easier to ensure compliance. This is going to be more important. In the past, under the old free trade agreement, was all about minimising tariffs, and reducing tariffs. One of the things Australia has is some of the lowest tariffs in the world. So the benefits from any of these agreements in terms of accessing Australian market from tariffs is very limited because they were already very low.
What should be done to better utilise these opportunities?
Well, I think one is knowing about it, and that's not just having a website with the information. That doesn't work. But also important is for Vietnam to continue its reform efforts. Things like building market economic institutions, freeing the barriers for private sector development. And one of the problems is that if you have a whole lot of very small private sector, very hard for them to have the scale to access international markets. So as you see the domestic private corporate sector develop, that will also provide new opportunity. And then particularly it's going to be areas like support services, trade support services, logistics, all these sorts of things are going to be critical. It's going to be the service companies who really are on top of the support services companies that are really going to be on top of what opportunities are available in other countries. So they can help make the networks. It's not just about doing promotion and saying you've got this product. It's about building your networks with the other countries. The cross-border production networks are an important way of marketing and accessing new markets. And in case of CPTP, for instance, if you want to get the most out of the potential for exporting garments, because at the moment you import a lot of your inputs for making garments from China, under the rules of origin, they won't get the benefits of the tariff reductions because they don't meet the rules of origin. To meet the rules of origin, the inputs that you're using into the products you're manufacturing for export have to be made by one of the other CPTP countries. So to get the most out of it, you would hope that more of the inputs that you're using to make garments, for instance, are made here. It might mean that you're making more yarn here, more materials. Maybe that means you import more cotton or wool from Australia, then manufacture. Then you get the full the tariff preferences that are available.
The growing number of Asians in Australia brings opportunities for Vietnamese goods to penetrate this market. However, these opportunities are not easy. Take the Vietnamese agriculture and aquatic products, for example. In order to increase the productivity of off-season dragon fruits, Vietnamese farmers have used light bulbs like this to stimulate dragon fruit trees to bloom instead of using chemicals. This is an example of a cleaner production method from land to water. Yet, it took Vietnamese dragon fruit 7 years to enter Australia after many negotiations and inspections. This long process for a foreign fruit to enter Australia is understandable because the regulations for transporting domestic plants from one region to another in Australia itself is very strict.
Within Australia even, we have quite strict provisions between the transportation of agricultural products even between states. Where I grew up in Tasmania, of course, is a great apple growing region. And if you left Tasmania, you weren't allowed to take apples with you even to Victoria or other states in Australia because of the strict quarantine provisions.
More tropical fruits like dragon fruit, mango or lychee accepted by Australia recently brought good news for Vietnamese agriculture. However, the increase in export turnover is still limited. The average agriculture export turnover of Vietnam to Australia each year is about $450 million. This figure is still lower than the two main products Vietnam is importing from Australia, namely cotton and wheat, above $600 million. There's still no breakthrough growth because the types of products allowed to enter Australia are still limited.
Khi mà chúng ta muốn có một cái quy mô vừa lớn để sản xuất theo chủng loại tốt để áp dụng khoa học công nghệ giảm giá thành thì phải cần một cái quy mô vừa tầm. Đấy. Hoặc ít nhất là chúng ta có thể liên kết các hộ lại với nhau. Thì hiện nay thì đúng là cái khâu liên kết của chúng ta là khâu rất là yếu. Tại vì là hộ của chúng ta nó quá nhỏ rồi.
Although Vietnam trout fish has accounted for more than 90% of the Australian market, and shrimp is more than 30%. For total seafood products exported to Australia, Vietnam is still behind Thailand, which accounts for half of the market share.
In your opinion, what are the biggest challenges for Vietnam's agro-produce to increase its presence in Australia?
Size of the market is going to be a problem. The fact that Australia is also an agricultural producer that limits the opportunities. And complying with Australia's strict SPS and safety standards, that's a real challenge. And then getting the scale, and to get the scale, it's a matter of local institutions working with farmers, helping organise farmers so that that they meet the quality standards that you organise in terms of being able to do traceability if there are problems.
What about the other challenges that Vietnamese firms face? I mean, in terms of information regarding CPTPP, many Vietnamese enterprises still have very limited knowledge about it, or also competitive pressure from other countries also exporting to Australia. So what can you say about these other challenges?
The reality is a lot of the people will get information by their service providers, by their trade specialist companies, logistics companies, whatever. They'll be getting information that way. They'll learn. They'll also learn from each other as someone else starts engaging in trading. They'll see what they're doing. They'll learn from that experience. The other way is through the regional production networks or other linkages with established exporters. So you would like to see more and more of the foreign investors building links with domestic companies, domestic firms, and maybe exporting that way.
In the CPTPP, Australia has made more extensive commitments than the WTO, specifically in the distribution sector, including wholesale and retail. However, it is not simple to bring Vietnam's wholesale and retail services into the Australian market. Until now, only 2 names, Costco of the United States and Aldi of Germany have gained strong footholds in the Australian market.
Vào thị trường Úc rất cần phải kiên nhẫn. Và ở thị trường Úc thì cũng có một cái điểm đặc biệt, đó là hầu hết các nhà nhập khẩu cũng như là các nhà bán lẻ là họ không có cái mối quan hệ trực tiếp với các nhà cung ứng hàng hóa nước ngoài, mà thông thường là họ thông qua các cái đại lý của họ ở các cái trung tâm, ví dụ như là Thượng Hải, ví dụ như Hồng Kông hay là các nơi khác. Ở Việt Nam đáng tiếc là chưa có. Và vì vậy cái con đường thâm nhập của chúng ta thì không nên là tìm cách, chúng ta chỉ tìm cách để trực tiếp giới thiệu với các nhà nhập khẩu hay các nhà bán lẻ lớn, các chuỗi bán lẻ lớn của Úc là đương nhiên rồi. Nhưng mà muốn thực sự là bán được hàng, chúng ta phải tiếp cận được các cái đại lý khu vực này.
Not just retail, but also the Vietnamese textile industry sees opportunities and challenges in the Australian market. In 2018, while Australia imported $9.32 billion of textile products from around the world, the total value of Vietnamese textile and garment products entering this market only reached $173 million. This enterprise specializes in making uniforms for export to Japanese and American markets. Realizing the opportunity in the Australian market, this business has changed its production method to seek opportunities to enter this market.
Trước là chúng ta hay làm tất ôm cả, thì khi sẽ dẫn đến vấn đề là thứ nhất là nhân công, thứ hai nữa là máy móc thiết bị. Và máy móc thiết bị bây giờ thì hàng năm, hàng tháng họ ra liên tục những cái mới, và những cái đơn hàng mà họ đưa về cho chúng tôi họ cũng yêu cầu đòi hỏi rất là cao. Nếu mà họ cứ đưa về những cái đơn hàng đòi hỏi cao như thế mà mình mà lại mua máy móc mình đầu tư vào để mình đáp ứng cho họ, thì đó là cái mà cũng rất là rủi ro, tại vì có thể là được một vài đơn hàng nhưng họ lại thay đổi. Thế thì thay vì như thế thì chúng tôi sẽ liên kết lại với những cái đơn hàng như thế, thì chúng tôi là sẽ có là đứng ra trách nhiệm là sẽ nhận những cái đơn hàng đó, còn đâu là sẽ đi liên kết với các xưởng mà người ta có đủ điều kiện để cùng hợp tác với chúng tôi.
Với các doanh nghiệp mà bây giờ mới chuẩn bị thâm nhập thị trường thì cũng có một điều cần tránh nữa, đó là chúng ta không nên quá kỳ vọng vào cái mức giá cao bán ở trên thị trường của Úc. Tôi muốn nói đến thị trường bán lẻ, bởi vì cái mức mà chúng ta hay gọi là margin của thị trường đó cũng rất là cao. Ví dụ như là một cái sản phẩm may mặc ở bán lẻ ở Úc thì có thể là gấp 4 lần cái giá FOB hay là FCA. Ví dụ như chúng ta có thể thấy là một sản phẩm ví dụ $100 đi, thì chúng ta nghĩ ở đây giá xuất khẩu chỉ có thể là khoảng từ $20 đến $25. Và vì vậy thì chúng ta không nên ảo tưởng rằng với cái giá bán lẻ cao như vậy thì chúng ta cũng bán được cái giá rất cao, và chúng ta phải rất hiểu thị trường.
An effective supporter for Vietnamese businesses is the Vietnam Trade Office in Australia, with its headquarters in Sydney. This place is a pioneer in Australian market research and analysis. This organization, together with the WTO Center of Vietnam Chamber and Commerce and Industry in Vietnam, are the two places where enterprises can seek information, networking, and sharing experiences.
Can you help explain some characteristic and tastes of the Australian consumers, so Vietnamese enterprises have a better understanding to better cater to their demand?
Australia is increasingly, particularly since I've left there, become a multicultural society. There's people from all around the world. I think people there like trying new things, experimenting with new products, and I think this provides an opportunity. But we do, Australia does have very strict quality control standards. They want not just the quality, that's not going to be a problem, but the consistency of the quality will be a problem. And again, with the limited number of buyers there, that's particularly important, how you build a reputation to access the market there, and then once you have that access, to maintain that reputation.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
In the coming time, Vietnamese enterprises need to study the content of the CPTPP, analyze and understand the requirements of the Australian market, and focus on unique agricultural products such as dragon fruit, mangoes, textile, computer, wooden furniture, and mobile phone parts. In order to set a strong foothold in the Australian market, Vietnamese enterprises must aim at a cleaner production in which product quality is always a top priority rather than output and price. And that wraps up this edition of BizLine. In the meantime, feel free to log on to vtv4.vtv.vn or install our mobile app VTV4Go for more news and entertainment. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time.